Howdy y'all, TheJTJ here with Roll to Wound. Me and my buddy are going to be talking about the new Soulblight Gravelord Battletome. Stick around. Alright, TheJTJ, and we're going to be talking about some Soulblight today. This is going to be a general overview of what's in the book. We're not going to go into too much detail. We're just going to give those of you that are sort of interested in Soulblight sort of our opinion, a little bit of overview of what's in the Battletome. Like I said, I'm TheJTJ, and I'm here with my friend Chris. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Like you said, my name's Chris. Started playing some Warhammer back in 3rd and 4th edition 40k, and kind of stopped for quite a while, and looked for fantasy, found out that didn't exist anymore, and got into AOS about 2 years ago, and with Legions in the Gash, and did some Khorne, and looks like we're back to Legions in the Gash 2.0, or we'll discuss why that may not be accurate, or maybe it will be. Who knows?
All right, so let's get right into it. The Soulblight Gravelord Battletome brings back a lot of old favorites and adds some new units and ways to play. One of Warhammer's oldest armies is the Vampire Counts, or the old Vampire books. There's been a lot of controversy sort of surrounding this book and the release, starting with the release of Cursed Cities. Cursed Cities is a box game, and it featured the Vicross Dynasty. Hey, I'm going to murder all the names, all these weird words, so just bear with me, guys out there. Please correct me in the comments. The Vicross Dynasty. It sold out in a matter of minutes from the GW site, and all our independent retailers, they were limited in their copies, and there was a wait list for everything. If you looked at the eBay prices, they went through the roof. Many saw this box as the de facto Soulblight like starter box. That's when that came out. Everybody saying that's going to be the starter. That's going to be the starter. Then there was a bunch of, to add fuel to the fire, there was a bunch of back and forth between GW and like the gamers going, hey, when can we get this? When is it going to be re-released? And then there would be misinformation of, well, we're not making any more copies. We are making more copies. So you had that going back and forth. The book was fully announced during the Warhammer Fest 2021, and many knew. So the next thing that sort of happened, they sort of released the whole book and said, "Hey, here comes the Soulblight. Here's all sort of our intro models. Here's what we're showing you with all the pictures." And then it was sort of another mini controversy with the Avengori Lord and the Lakavai. How do you pronounce?
I think it's Lakavai, the Mother of Nightmares, or something like that.
Yeah. And it was a polarizing sculpt, and it actually got me. I said, I got to go make a video on this because it's so not what I was expecting especially for a centerpiece model. So there was a lot out there that people loved it, people hated it. When we actually get into detail about that, I've sort of found it's out on the internet where I think the origins of that sculpt came from. So it's loved and hated by a lot of people. Finally, over a week before the official release, most of the Battletome was leaked, and this caused like all the fanboys to be in an uproar because they started reading through the rules and they started hating it. There's been a lot of people that hate it. There's been people that like it, and there's people that's happy with it, but there is a lot of people out there that are not so happy. All right, so for today's video, we're just going to give you a brief overview and our initial thoughts about the book, what we like and what we dislike. And in the future videos, we'll be doing a deep dive into each ability, spell, war scroll, and tactics. So if you're interested in more in-depth review, just like subscribe, stay posted on the channel. Over the next week or so, we're going to be putting out more videos that go into depth about everything. So we're going to jump into Legion's abilities first. So let's talk about some of the big differences in the Allegiance abilities so far, what they've come out with, and as opposed to the old Legions of Nagash book.
Right. So, there's some pluses and minuses. I think the biggest hit, in my opinion, is that they changed Deathly Invocations, right, from War Scrolls to Allegiance abilities, and I think that's cool. That's one less thing to gum up a War Scroll. What I don't think is cool is summonable unit can only be a recipient of that once per turn.
Yeah.
So even if you have 4 heroes, they can't all target that unit, target the next unit. So all of a sudden, your summoning potential or regen potential is nosedives. So that's a huge hit, in my opinion. And then
that's probably the number 1 hit to me.
Yeah. Well, especially if you play the Skeleton Horde, right? That's the biggest thing for you. One thing I do like is, and it took me a minute to realize this, was the way the coming out of the graves from the Unquiet Dead. Before, you used to have, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I played Aegis and Nagash, you had to have a hero trigger summonable units to come out.
Yeah, it was a general. It was your general command ability.
Oh, it was a general. Oh, that's even more finite. Well, yeah, so now you don't. You just put them in the grave, and they can come out, which I think is awesome. I'm a big fan of that. Keeping the Locus of Shayesh, before, it was not unmodified 9, right? It was just 9? You remember? Original Locus of Shayesh to get the dual.
Was it a modified or un? I thought it was if you just roll an unmodified. Locus was a 9+, unmodified roll of 9+.
That's the old one, or because that's the current one. Yeah. Okay. So that not a big deal there. I think that's cool. Like, we'll get into it, but the lore of the vampires is kind of doo-doo in my opinion. So, like, I mean, at the highest level, Locus Shayesh is pretty cool, right? You can maybe have your spells go off twice. Problem is you have to take Lore of the Vampires. There's not much that you really care if it goes off twice. Maybe Amaranthian Orb, but yeah.
Yeah, and well, Amaranthian Orb is probably the number 1 thing that's going to go off twice and do anything. The problem is Pinions I used to live and die by that hitting that twice, especially when it was on Nagash. The other big things too is Deathless Minions is wholly within 12 and not 6. So there's a lot more. And we knew this was coming, that there's a lot more wholly within. The old book was so old that it was just within. So that's going to change play styles. You could string out like your line of zombies or Black Knights or whatever you wanted.
I think it's for the health of the game. I think it's good wholly within. I don't like the conga line skeleton and zombie hordes, but it definitely is a nerf.
Reanimated Horrors is a new rule, and that's it's kind of like nice, but it's kind of like a bonus, but it was already there, sort of on the banners anyway. So the units that used to have it used to have it on their banner. So
yeah, well, and here's the thing: is the old Legion of Blood was also a -1 to bravery, but it was just everything in your army that was Legion of Blood gave that. This is a little more finite. It's Deadwalkers and Death Rattle. So my big ass zombie dragon doesn't scare things apparently. So I don't know.
So those are a couple of the bigger changes with the Allegiance abilities. I guess my big takeaway from it is Endless Legion's hot garbage. The only thing that makes it better is no need for heroes or CPs. So bringing all these units back that are dead, now they're halved. I'm like, wow. It's almost like, why make it do a roll and then make it half? I could see one or the other. If you're like, hey, we're going to make this a little bit more of a chance, like you're going to bring your unit back, but you got to hit a 5+. So if you didn't kill anything or you roll bad, can't bring it back. I can see that, but if you're going to make it half, at least make it cost, don't make it a roll. I don't know. There's 2 ways, and I get what you were saying about you can use it to scare people. Sort of like gnaw holes with Skaven, that you put your gnaw holes out there, and it's something that people worry about, and they've got to sort of put a unit over there watching. But at least with gnaw holes, it's like, hey, I have a hero and a unit, that thing can go out there. With this, there's no guarantee all game that you would bring something back, and I think that's really taken down.
Yeah, it hits all the harder for people that played old Legions of Nagash with the Horde armies, because you've taken a 40 block of skeletons, and then with one command point, bringing all that back is huge for you, right? Yeah. For me, when my only summonable stuff a lot of times was 5-man direwolves, I really don't care. So
Well, you can bring stuff out of the grave too at the beginning of the game, or sometimes you can leave it there too. Like, hey, I'm going to pop
true.
this unit up. So there is some viability there. But when I used to play, I'd probably put one sort of in that position, and the other three I would stack centrally. A lot of times, not necessarily overlapping, but close. So that way, you could triple heal your big unit of skeletons, and then your two necromancers and Nagash would also heal your unit of skeletons. And now a unit really can't benefit more than once from any kind of res. So
that's right.
now as it goes down to what I think they could have done better or made it cooler, I honestly think that we sort of hit on some of these points, which Locust is great. It's like I think they could have done a little bit something different with the way Deathly Invocation worked. With not, you're going to give me a Mortarch that can heal 4 units. Okay, so you already said, hey, they can heal 4 units, but it's got to be summonable. So I can't even heal my vampires. I can't even heal something else. And then, am I going to have 4 units of summonable out there? And then what happens to the vampire or the death mage that's standing next to them? They just don't even get to interact with that.
Yeah, that's my biggest negative on that is, like, when a Mortarch is there that can do 4, then more than likely your other heroes are going to pull it off. Yeah.
Just a big missed opportunity in my mind of that.
Yep.
So let's move on to talk about spells real quick. The spell lores, basically, we'd sort of talked about Locust, which is an allegiance ability, which is like I said, on a natural roll of a 9, that spell goes off twice. But there's some parameters you got to work within. Some of the spells specifically say you can't do it twice. Some say like there's parameters, but some really do stack, and it's really nice. Some of these stuff can be game changing. There's 2 lores. There's lore of vampires. There's lore of death mages. The first lore is and there's one outside the lore called Invigorating Aura. And basically, Invigorating Aura is your heal spell that works just like your grave sites, just like your heroes being able to heal.
It's a guaranteed 3.
Yeah, and it's a casting value of 8, and that's probably one of the most expensive things in this whole book. But you get +1 for every hero, or let me say Soulblight Gravelord hero on the battlefield. So that's a nice buff. If you got 3 or 4 heroes out there, casting value is real low, and you can heal someone up. But no locus on it, and you can only the unit can only benefit from it once.
Yep.
So lore of vampires, you had sort of alluded to it a minute ago, and all in all, it is overwhelming. Used to, there were 3 or 4 spells, the way they were written, that were, I have to think which one do I want to take? Like on my vampire on zombie dragon or my foot vampire, maybe I want to take one of these. This could be a good combo, or this would be useful. Now, in my mind, there's 2.
Yeah, no, Opinions and Orb, I'm assuming, is what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Yep.
And more than likely, depending on what it's on and what I want to do, I don't know. It's tough because I would love to get extra movement on my zombie dragon. However, like I said, there's no guarantee that spell's going off, so you can't really build a list around that going off. Orb is good.
It's great, especially if it goes off twice. I think the thing to talk about, though, is the Vile Transference change. It's horrible, in my opinion. That used to be what I debated sometimes when putting on a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. Sometimes it was Pinions, but a lot of times it was Vile Transference, because you get that Chalice, and you can maybe get that spell off, and you get some big heals. Now it's pretty garbage spell, in my opinion.
But that old combo with Vile Transference and the Chalice, that's a 9 wound on max 9 wound flip. Now there's no more Chalice except for the Prince, right?
Yep.
And Vile Transference used to be basically you could do D3 mortals and heal D3. Now it's pick one enemy unit within 6, so you've almost pretty much got to be in combat range, and then roll a dice equal to the number of wounds characteristic, rounding up. For each 6, you can heal 1 allocated wound. So I did a little math hammer on this. For a 20 wound monster, you're averaging 1.5 wounds back. Or it's not even wounds to them; it's just heal that, right?
Yeah, you can't hurt them. You can't hurt them. Yeah, so it's a huge nerf. And
all right, so now we got the lore of Death Mages, and this is where it shines. This is one of the best sort of lores in the game holistically to me. Like, is there better spells out there? 100%. But just top to bottom on this lore, it's full of useful stuff, and some of them, especially when you're looking at the Shaiish, is that you can debuff a unit to it's ineffective.
Yeah. Well, to your point, because most of this you can, if you get the double cast from the Locust Shaiish, you can put both of those effects on the same unit, and I think in every instance, just about at least. So you can really neuter a hard hitting monster or big unit of infantry.
Yeah, there's only one in here, I think, that it says specifically. It's Prison of Grief. Doesn't allow you to put it on twice. But that's okay. If he goes off twice, it's within 12, so you could probably pick another unit. But Overwhelming Dread is, I used to carry this a lot. It's very nice. It is pick one enemy unit with an 18 and subtract 1 from the hit rolls. And all throughout second edition, I have said it 100 times. Anything that is -1 to hit is one of your top 5 abilities or buffs in the game, or debuffs if you want to look at that.
And it might be a -2 if you get lucky. Yeah. So,
Fading Vigor, subtract 1 from the attack characteristic of the unit's melee weapons. And it's funny, in Old Legion, I would sort of alternate these two, and when you had Nagash, you could just pick, I would rather that unit lose 2 attack or an attack or whatever, or you would try, maybe that's a 3 attack unit, and you would say, okay, I'm gonna hit him with a Fading Vigor. Hopefully I can spike that and make him get down to 1.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I always had a hard time using Overwhelming Dread or Fading Vigor, like if I had a Necromancer where I had to make the choice.
Spectral Grass. Spectral Grass has a casting cost of 6. It's 6 class. Pick 1 terrain feature. Now, I've heard a lot of people that like this a lot. And to your next hero phase, the move characteristic of a unit within 3 is halved. But the bad thing is it's a terrain feature wholly within 18. And I know 18 is a pretty big bubble, but that was the one thing I don't kind of like, because on certain boards, certain terrain features can be 12 inches by 12 inches, or hey, there's some ruins that connect. Does that count as one terrain feature? And if it was just pick a terrain feature within 12 or something, I would like that. You would have a lot more options or something. But
yeah, no, to me it's okay, but the Lord Death Mages has got so many things in it that are better in my opinion.
But then you have Decryptify and Soul Harvest, and we won't go into too much detail with them, but they're really good. Like, all these spells they have a place, and if you have a bunch of wizards, if you're playing wizard heavy, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do and build around in here. So we'll skim through the dynasties real quick. There's a lot of meat on that bone. So we won't go too far into detail with them. Just a general overview. So we'll start off with the Legion of Blood. And what does this dynasty focus on? If I'm telling you, hey, I'm taking a Legion of Blood, what are the Legion of Blood all about? What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, right? Is it used to be your vampires, but really now it looks like you want to play a lot of death rattle stuff, because that's kind of what their battle traits are doing. I mean, there's a little bit of battle shock stuff there, but I think that's so insignificant in my opinion, right now in 2.0, talking about fleeing, that I don't see that as a big deal. So then the other thing is the favored retainers, which is the big change that I alluded to, going from getting your vampires and legions of Nagash to get extra attacks to now it's your death rattle stuff doesn't get modified negatively by hit and wounds, which can be very, very strong, of course. But it definitely changes how Legion of Blood played compared to the old book. So, you know, if you want your skeletons, this might be one you consider, possibly.
Yeah, and it's almost like the scary, you know, like enemy fails battle shot text within D3 number, an extra you know models run. Ignore negative hit wound modifiers wholly within 12 and 18 of the heroes, right?
Well, you have to have a hero, wholly within 18 of the unit for them not to suffer the negatives.
But so it's pretty big though. Now this one, like some of the legions don't. They have a little bit of different structure. It's they don't. This one does have 6 command traits and 6 artifacts to pick from, and generally speaking, their command traits are pretty solid across the board. Soul Crushing Contempt was probably the only one that I had that was kind of like, you know, a C, but everything else was A pluses and B pluses. So you have some really good command traits in Legion of Blood.
Yeah, the command traits, like you said, pretty decent, and honestly, the artifacts are right. I think this is the one where you get the soulbound garments. So that used to be reroll once to save, but that's now just a straight up add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target the bearer. So you can have a 2-up Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon.
Yep. And, you know, there are, to me, Orb of Enchantment and Amulet Screams are I don't like them. I gave them low grades. And you'll get to know if you hang around me long enough, you know I hate things that are once per game. If you're giving me a command trait or artifact that's 1 use per game, it better be like an auto take, because it's so good. It's so, you know, it can win you a game, like if you play it right.
So as I was looking through this book, what do you think? Because there's a lot of that in this book. Once per game, use this. Do you think that's any indication of future things to come for artifacts and command traits, or do you think they just didn't like Soulblight Gravelords and we only get to use our stuff once?
I think that's probably an indication, because if you remember back, the GHB, was it last year? Was it 2020? I think it was 2020 or 2019, where they changed all the artifacts. They basically took you know, all the artifacts away and gave you 1 per realm, and they totally nerfed the way artifacts were. I think that was. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that was last year's GHB. That was the big one. Yeah, the ethereal amulet no longer.
I was about it. I just had my vampire on zombie dragon. You know.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that is a trend. I think that's something you're going to see, and there's a couple more things too to point out. But that's a good point, that there is a lot of 1 use, and there's a lot of rolls after the fact, especially in the spells, where not only do I got to cast a spell, do I got to make sure you don't unbind it, and then after that, I still a lot of times in this book have to roll another dice to make it even work. So. And if you really start factoring that in, it makes the math way more complex. Like, all right, the next dynasty is the Legion of Night, and the Legion of Night was my favorite, and I do like Manfred from the fluff. I've read some books. I've listened to a lot of audiobooks with him. Love playing him in Warhammer Total War. So this one I was really keen on figuring out if it's worth taking. Adds 1 to gives a +1 save to death rattle or dead walkers on the first turn. And you can set up and outflank. 1 unit's got to be on the board. 1 can go out. It's going to outflank from the edge, 6 inches. Kind of, you know, disappointed that they made it first turn. I guess because the old death rattle, the old way it was if you're fully in your territory, you got a +1 save, which actually made Graveguard. Oh, this is a viable unit now. They got a good save. with the first turn, basically what you're doing is saying, "Hey, I'm not scared of Alpha Strike," or maybe I plan to Alpha Strike you.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. That yeah, you can do some outflank with Legion of Night, and so it's like, I guess, are you going to try to Alpha Strike and tie them up? Is that your plan, or you weather the Alpha Strike? Like, I guess, but I agree. I like the old one more. We're wholly within your own territory. It's not so dependent on the first turn and get more use out of it. But I like them overall. I think, you played Legion of Night. I think the way you played it, it's still very viable. I don't think it was a dramatic change from how it used to be.
But other than their actual Legion ability, their command traits are good. Like, solid to take it. I won't go too much detail into it, but they're good. Artifact wise, did you have an opinion on the artifacts for Legion of Night?
Yeah. So the only thing that is a big plus for me in Legion of Night artifact that I like is the one. It's the same as the old Legions of Nagash. Forgot exactly what it was called, but like the claw where the bearer cannot move. Put the sigils in the ground. You get +2 to casting for all wizards within like 12 or something. I think that's pretty nice because that helps get some reliable casts off. And I like that artifact. But other than that, there's not anything that I'm like super head over heels in love with from Legions of Night.
All right, the next Legion up is I'm gonna probably say this name wrong. The Castelia,
I think.
Castelia, and
Yeah.
and this is your looks like your Legion.
Yep.
You can outflank Blood Knights as the trait, and the vampire units gain an ability for killing a unit. It could be +1 damage, +1 wound, or +2 to run and charge, depending on what they kill. Personally, to me, the command traits are I don't care for most of them. Swift and Deadly and Craving for Massacre was only the two that I was sort of interested in.
It's funny. I think this is one of the things that I had mentioned to you, where I think you and I differ so greatly on, because the first list, or the list that I'm going to probably take to Atomic next month, is using Rousing Commander, which you very clearly don't like, and then the artifact, which is, I think, the Grave Sand Shard. It's the one.
It gives you once per battle.
Once per battle, and you get +1 your deathly or your deathly minions roll or whatever, right? Goes from a 6+ to a 5+. And so, without going into too much detail, though, I think the plan that I got is either going to go up in flames or it could work. And I mean, it's kind of a shock and awe idea, right? I mean, both those things are once per game, so you got to use them pretty correctly, otherwise you're kind of screwed. But you can lay into that command trait, Rousing Commander, and get some pretty good damage if you position your Blood Knights right. You can make them pretty tanky, making them 4 wound characteristic for your Blood Knights, and then your kind of Feel No Pain that goes to a 5-up. Well, the Blood Knight banner makes you reroll 1s, so all of a sudden you've got a 5-up rerolling 1s on your Feel No Pain. So there's play to it. I'm not saying it's the best play, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It's going to take positioning. It's going to take a lot of strategy and some luck, I think. So we'll see. If we talk in a month from now, I may say, "Wow, this was terrible," but I see a little play there, and I really want to try it. So that's my thoughts.
All right, next dynasty up is the Avengori Dynasty, and this is basically your monster dynasty where you're going to have lots of big units. I would say big units. Lots
big models.
Of big models, yeah. One Terrorgeist or Zombie Dragon they get an ability. They gain a trait. -1 to hit monsters in melee unless it's a monster. So once again, we're looking at those -1 modifiers. Super, super good. You can run your big zombie dragon into something, as long as it's a big horde of whatever, and they're going to be -1 to hit, which is going to make it way more survival. And then once per turn, a monster that's wounded can use its full profile.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. But I don't know what your thoughts are, but in my opinion, this is the worst bloodline in the book. I feel like if you want to play the big old monster mash, go play Flesh Eater Courts. They do it better. And I mean, I guess you can play it in Soulblight Gravelords, but I don't know. I'm not a fan, personally.
Well, I've got 2 Terraghasts and a zombie dragon sitting there.
Is that what you're going to be playing?
I don't know. I don't know. I look at it and go, I don't think it's as simple as an auto push button as Feck. Like, but
yeah, oh, for sure.
I think with a little bit more analyzing, a little bit more playing, that it might have some legs. There might be something there. But then again, it might just be like, no, don't take that. Just take your Terraghasts in another Legion. And finally, we got the Vicross.
Yeah.
And personally, to me, this is your casting dynasty. Add 1 to wound rolls for attacks made with Death Rattle or Dead Walkers while they are wholly within 9 of a friendly vampire hero. So that's really good. And the other Legion trait is reroll casting for friendly vampire wizards. So you're getting a reroll cast.
That's big.
Yeah. And I just think that they have good traits. They have good artifacts. The worst part about this dynasty is I really am interested in looking at it and exploring it more. But basically, all their heroes are brand new, so you need to go out and buy all new. This is the new dynasty. You need all new models. I mean, you don't have to. You could just run some old models out there, but a lot of their fun models are going to be brand new.
And it's ironic, isn't it, that, at least in my opinion, this looks like the strongest one. So, good old Games Workshop come out with a whole bunch of new models. Got to sell them, give them the best rules. But looking at it, I think when I look at trying to make it competitive, like what I think is probably the most competitive, at least in my mind, initially, is in this dynasty. You get the reroll casts. You have some woman that rides the wolf. She has a +1 to cast, so she's +1 and rerolling. So I think this is really strong, and there's some good stuff in it. So,
all right. So you've got your dynasties there, and each one do a different thing. I'm not sitting here and saying which one's the best or worst at all, because it's going to take your play style, it's going to take your meta, and it's going to take what do you want to do. Because right now the book is so young, the army's so young, that you're going to start seeing people doing things like, oh, look at those stacks they're doing, look at those buffs, look how this works. And so I think that each one is viable at this point. It wasn't like when OBR came out and it was like, oh, Petrifex Elite, like automatic, take that. This one, there is some argument to be made, pluses and minuses for everyone. So right now we will talk about War Scrolls, and we're not going to cover every War Scroll. I'm just going to throw out my winners and my losers. So the winners for this book on War Scrolls, and this is what these are the units just off the cusp that I would look to build around. I would probably figure out which Legion I like the best, or which one of these War Scrolls, and then I'd pick their Legion and I'd build around it. Zombies look very nice. Manfred, I ordered the model. I'm fixing to build me a Manfred. Yeah.
Yep.
Prince Vordre.
Yeah.
I think there's still debate on his versus a Vampire Lord, but he's still a good War Scroll just himself. Belladonna of Olga. I know some people have been wishy-washy on her. It was one of those, when I read her War Scroll, I went, ooh, I would take that. Radikar 100%. The Beast. Yeah. Radikar the Beast, I think, is he's a Missile of Doom. So you just go send him at something. Nefertata is still good. I think there's going to be some builds with her. Neferata, I always call her Nefertata. Neferata. Blood Knights, like you were saying. The can't keep them on the shelf, man. Everybody wants some Blood Knights.
Sir.
And a sneaky war scroll is the corpse cart. I think that it's not going to be good in a lot of builds, but if you're running a zombie heavy build, that corpse cart is going to be worth its weight in dead bodies, I guess. Did you have any war scrolls to add to that? Some that I missed?
None that you missed. I think the biggest one is the Belladama Volga. I think the more I look at her, the more I think she's probably one of the best bang for your buck in this book. Yeah. The only other thing that I would mention that you didn't, two honorable mentions I'll give you. One, I think Graveguard can be decent, a little expensive, but they've got probably potentially some of the best hitting power in the book. And then the Coven Throne is overcosted, maybe. That command point is incredible. +1 hit, wound, and save until your next hero phase. You can make some crazy Blood Knights or Zombie Dragon, or take your pick. But the downside is it's not very defensive, and a shooting army or a magic heavy army is just going to tear it apart real fast. So I don't know. On paper, it's one of those things that looks amazing, but in practice, maybe not.
So the big losers, my first number one biggest loser of the book is the Cursed Cities units. Having to buy it as a 750 block is garbage. I feel, well, I'll get into what they're going to change later, but I feel that they're going to come out with blisters for all these, and they're going to get their individual war scrolls eventually because. Well, go ahead.
Did you see that Games Workshop announced that you can now buy the whole Cursed City models, not in the Cursed City box? Yeah. So, jeez.
Well, we just now need an FAQ that lets you buy them separately, because I think there's some utility in there. There's some good units, but when I look at it collectively as a whole for 750 points, I go, yeah, I don't think I want to take that. And maybe if you ran a fluff or thematic list, it would be cool. It'd be fun. Like I'm not saying it wouldn't be. I'm just saying personally, if I'm list building and army building, there's a couple things in there. I honestly just don't want to sink 750 points into a bunch of characters that are kind of meh.
Yeah.
Crimson Court, man. I bought the Crimson Court and I was super excited. I thought that I was thinking that maybe I could have 4 new vampires for my army that were armed with different weapons that would do different things. And no, they're just a mediocre warband. I'm not going to go deep into it. It's got a lot of things wrong with it and a lot of things that could have just made it better, even if they charged you more points for it. I would pay them more points to have it function.
On the Salt and the Wound, a lot of people are saying, well, if nothing else, it'll make for good 4 Vampire Lord hero models. Well, guess what? The Vampire Lord now has a 40 mil base, so you can't even use the Crimson Court for that unless you rebase them.
It brings to the next point, the Vampire Lord. I have probably 10 on the shelf. I have all the old meta ones. I've got 3 different ones riding mounts. I've got winged ones. I've got ones with shield, ones with great weapons. But, that doesn't matter now because there's only one Vampire Lord and they fly, 6 inches? It's just not good. And you make a book around vampires, and your number one war scroll, which should be the coolest, the funnest. If you're not going to make it customizable, at least give us an option for a mount or something. And then nope. I'm going to go with a White King, not necessarily on the horse, but the foot White King. I think both of them are kind of meh. But if I was taking one, I'm taking definitely one on horse. The White King I wish they would have done something different or better with that. And finally, you got Black Knights, and I know everybody's been griping about that. Black Knights were barely usable in Legion, and they were, I don't want to say twice as good, but probably twice as good if you factor in the extra damage on the charge and the way they could be, you could stack healing on them to heal them back.
Yeah.
Now it's a tax unit for a battalion, basically.
Yeah, they were passable before. Now it's terrible.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up the thoughts on all the war scrolls and everything. I personally believe this book was written for 3rd edition in mind. Some of the things that could have a correlation is the CP changes. battalion changes. They keep talking about the battalion changes. I think the battalions in this book is really good, and I think they're solid and they're functional. So we'll see what the battalion changes look like. Interaction with some rules look a little funky right now, specifically the Blood Knights and their charging over the unit.
Yeah, Riders of Ruin, yeah.
Some of the things that I think that we'll see, maybe this is wish listing and hope over the next 12 months, because GW will do it, and they've shown that they will do it. New models, I would love to see endless spells. I don't know why GW didn't give endless spells. It was, come on, that was their...
Because Legions in the Gash book didn't have it, and this is update of that.
Obviously, I don't think there's going to be a terrain, because if they did a terrain, I don't think that they're going to, that would remove the grave sites. So that was my thing. If you're not giving us a new terrain piece, give us endless spells, but they didn't. I would like to see a new vampire kit. I honestly think that we might, in the form of vampire on horse or vampire on another mount. Abyssal Terror would be great. But or at least have a war scroll, and you could use a Blood Knight in the place of that.
Right.
Rules changes. I think a few things might get updated in FAQ, like the White King's command ability. It only works in the hero phase. It's little things like that. So, who should run out and buy this book today? Who are the people that are running to the stores to buy this book?
Me. I think anyone that like the theme of Legions in the Gash is still very similar, but you're gonna have to adapt your play style because you can't run the big hordes of skeletons and regen them like crazy. So if that was your thing and that's all you really cared about, then you won't want this book. But if you still want the undead play, now zombies have play. And they've got cool models, in my opinion. There's that. I know some people really like the Vicross, kind of the werewolf theme, that's kind of a cool thing. I know I've heard some people say they want to see werewolves in game. I think this may be as close as you get to that, at least in quite a while. So there's some unique stuff. There's some stuff that was old school, the skeletons, the zombies, the Blood Knights, and so I think there's still a place for people that really like Legions of the Gash old. They're just going to have to adapt, and then there's a place for kind of some new people, or maybe people that dabbled in the Cursed City, and they'll see a lot of similarities in this book.
Yeah, I agree. Right now, I think this book is written for people that like the aesthetic. You're going to get people from inside and outside the game that look at that and go, man, that looks cool. I really want to have those Blood Knights. And they're literally going to buy the book and the models just because they like those models or they like the idea of those models. So I think you're going to pull a lot of players from that. And there's a lot of old vampire accounts and even Legion of Gosh players that were looking forward to this. Is this a good, if I'm brand new to AOS, would this be a good starter book, a good starter army?
That's a good question, because in some instances, it depends what you're comparing it to. I think it's a lot better with starter army than Lumineth. There's so many rules and nuances with that army. This army, the biggest growing pain probably for a new player is all the Holy Within 12. Yeah. A lot of armies have Holy Withins, but they're bigger. So this is very dependent on making sure you have your stuff tightly packed. So
I agree. It is probably that. I think it is okay because death armies in general are, they're kind of forgiving for new players. You can make mistakes because you have that ability to bring stuff back, bring models back. I think it would be fine for a new player. I don't think it's too complex. I think there's enough variation that a player can sort of pick things, play it, learn the style, and get a good shot of it. Night Haunt's the same way. There's a lot of ores and in range withins and stuff. So I think a new player, if they were coming into the game, they would be fine getting this because I think they can grow with it. And I think they can, once they get good and learn it, I do think that you can take this book to a tournament and you can win 1 to 2 games. I'm not saying you're going to win 3 games in this meta. I haven't seen it yet. You obviously can always win 3 games, but I think you can take this book to a tournament, win a game or 2, and have fun and be competitive.
Yeah, I agree. I see play in the book. It has chance. Like I'm rating this personally as like a fat middle book. You know, means you got to have a few brain cells to play it effectively and get some wins. You're not gonna just roll in the wins, but it also means you're not Beast of Chaos and a glutton for punishment.
Yeah. So, and that I think I agree with you. I don't think this is going to be. It's somewhere in mid tier right now. Of course, these things always change because all it takes is watching a 3 or 4 or 50 games played and figuring out what's really good and what's not. But just on paper so far, I think that you're at a good solid mid tier book that you can go and you can have some friendly games with. You can go to a tournament and not just totally get the floor wiped with you every time. Some of the weaknesses of the books we'll go into is just real quick is I think that they missed a lot of opportunities on the War Scroll, like we were talking about with the vampires. I think they missed some opportunities in the lore of Death Mages, some of the resurrection stuff that isn't as good as it used to be or could be. And so that to me is sort of what would really hurt this book. What do you think some of the strengths of the book are?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. There's missed opportunities, but trying to look at the positives here. The positives are, I think one of the biggest positives is its internal balance. I've looked at a lot of different books that, okay, you can only play it this one way if you want to be competitive. Everything else is pretty junk. This, at least on initial look, I look at one bloodline or one set of way of playing it. I'm like, oh, okay, I think that I could play that and it'd be good. Then I look at something else, I'm like, actually, I like that, and that could be good too. And so I like that. I think that's how a book should be. You should have multiple options, and this book definitely has it. It has options, and I think that's the biggest strength. Now, in terms of going to a game and what are its strengths, I think, like you said, like all Death Armies, it's a little more forgiving. The fact that you can bring things back. So there is still the horde aspect of it. You know, you can maybe flood the game board with bodies, and that may be how you have to play this. One big thing I think you talked about, one of your big winter war scrolls, is zombies. That 6-inch activate and pile in. It looks slow, 4-inch speed, but now all of a sudden, let's say you run 6 inches. Okay, they move 10. Well, at the end of that 10, if there's an enemy 6 inches away, you can activate and pile in. So really, their threat range could be 16 inches. So that 4-inch speed is very deceiving. And you can catch some people, potentially.
And you can always bring them out of graves, or you can outflank them in Legion of Night. So there's other ways to get them further up the board at times. There is some strengths here. I think the lore of Death Mages in the debuff power of this book is there is debuff all over the place. So, and there are, you start looking at the monsters. The monsters can dish out some punishment. I think they're a little expensive. Vampire Lore and Zombie Dragon is like a quarter of your list almost. But you can pretty much build around him, and you have enough cheap fodder that you can flood the board with those zombies and say, okay, here's my magic missile of doom. You go over there and kill that thing while my zombies tie up the rest of it.
Yeah.
All right, so for everyone out there, just keep a lookout for the next videos in the series. We're going to go into a deep dive into everything from the every war scroll be broke down. We're going to go into tips, tactics, tricks as we get more familiar with the book and understand it better. So what is everybody else's opinions of the book? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it worth looking at? Let us know in the comments. And Chris, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you sitting here and putting up with me for a week while we work this video out.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. I look forward to talking more strategy and how to win with this book.
All right. Thanks for watching. Y'all be good.